Today on Rate the Thing, The Force Awakens, Star Wars Episode 7. Is this movie any good? Depends on who you ask. Myself and a couple of other people that I've talked to, we think this movie was lacking in a few areas. There are people that I have talked to that absolutely love this movie, and nobody I have talked to has ever said it was terrible. So, there is hope. A new hope? Anyway, this movie, Episode 7, it went through some troubles with the writing. It went through some potential directors that weren't signed on until J.J. Abrams came along, and he, with Lawrence Kasdan, helped write the final script. And Lawrence Kasdan, he pretty much wrote Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. So he definitely knows Star Wars. So there's some good things in Star Wars. Let's rattle off some good things. John Williams is back doing the musical score. This wouldn't be a Star Wars movie without John Williams, and hopefully he's around for episodes 8 and 9. J.J. Abrams is not going to be back for episodes 8 and 9 other than a producer credit. Lawrence Kasdan will not be back, and episode 8 so far is going to be written by Rian Johnson, and you can look him up on IMDb. Anyway, what Kasdan and Abrams did is they took a script by Michael Arndt, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that, and we got the movie that we see now. And the biggest problem I have with Star Wars The Force Awakens is that it takes all of the best parts about episodes 4, 5, and 6 and mushes them together in one movie, and we've seen it. We've seen this already. In fact, Return of the Jedi was largely a rehash of Episode 4 with some different, things like speeder bikes and Ewoks and things like that. Well, this movie, Episode 7, is much more in common with Episode 4. So let's rattle off some things, some of which are pretty glaringly obvious if you've seen any of the trailers. And in case you haven't noticed by now, spoilers! Okay, so now that we got that out, we have Starkiller Base, which is a gargantuan Death Star. In fact, it's not the size of a small moon, as Obi-Wan called it. It is the size of an entire planet. And around the center of the planet, there's a massive ring of engines and things like that. And what it does is it sucks all the energy out of the nearby star to feed its cannon. Now, presumably this planet can move once they use up a star, and they do that in the movie. But we don't know if the planet can move. So once they've done that, it kind of seems as a pretty impotent weapon and prohibitively expensive to make. And on a side note, if anyone has have any curiosity on financial matters, there are articles on the internet about the making of the first and second Death Stars and what that would have cost the Empire and the galaxy. I mean, it just the number is staggering in terms of cost. And this would have been even more expensive. All right. So the Empire has fallen apart, and there's this remnant left called the First Order. And for those of you who haven't seen the movie and were wondering, its opposition, the good guys, they're called the Resistance. And they are, in fact, funded by the New Republic. But they are not strictly affiliated with the New Republic. They're just fighting the First Order. And we don't get a sense at all that this fight has been going on for 30 years. Because that's the time frame between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. We just get the sense that for 30 years there's been some minor scraps and nothing much went on, and somehow the First Order built Starkiller Base without anyone noticing. Well, the Galactic Empire built the Death Star twice without anyone noticing. So maybe that is a Star Wars thing, that somehow you can make super weapons and nobody would have any clue. Okay, so ridiculous because of the cost, ridiculous because nobody noticed it being built until it was used in the movie. Ridiculous because the First Order or the Empire didn't learn from the previous two mistakes. Ridiculous because there's no real evidence suggesting that the two sides have been clashing for 30 years. It just suddenly the war starts up and out of nowhere. So that's a problem. Okay, so the next thing that they borrow is, and I'm going to jump around the movie here, but we have the old man who sacrifices himself to the villain via lightsaber death. And, okay, in The Force Awakens, it's Han Solo who dies to Kylo Ren. And turns out Kylo Ren is actually his and Leia's son, and his real name is Ben Solo, and he was being trained as a Jedi by Luke Skywalker, but then he got into the dark side, and the movie says, really briefly, they gloss over this, which was too short. But Ben Solo killed a bunch of Luke's other trainees, converted what was left to Knights of Ren. So they're not Sith. They're a new group. And then went off and did his own thing. Meanwhile, Han and Leia, because of this, their marriage falls apart. They stop talking to each other. And they don't do anything about Kylo Ren until this movie happens. So that's a little crazy. And then Luke Skywalker takes off for, a decade or two, or whatever it is, after the failure of Ben Solo. And nobody knows where he is. Now, that's a major plot point in the movie, and I don't actually have a problem with Luke disappearing. I know people do out there. I've heard some people complain about that, but I don't actually have a problem with that, other than he didn't really confront Kylo Ren. If he did, he failed. and then he went hiding. Well, now everybody's frantically trying to find Luke again. Well, if he failed already, and he was so embarrassed that he went into hiding, then why do we want to find him? He's obviously not the Savior. So there's that. Let's see. We got the trench run. Round 3. Let's see. We've got the cantina scene. Round 3. So yeah, there's some problems. Let's see what else. I'm sure I'll think of some other things, but I did mention that there were some good things. So yeah, the writing is actually solid, even if the plot is recycled. The story is new, and hopefully people know the difference between plot and story. I used to know somebody who didn't know the difference, and it was quite comical. But yeah, the plot is recycled, but the story is new. Oh, yes, something else. Yoda, is dead and gone, but they've replaced it with a non-force sensitive 1,000-year-old person that knows way too much about the Jedi, about Luke, about Vader, the Emperor, Kylo Ren, the new character of Rey, even though Rey doesn't know anything about Rey. And, yeah. So, let's see, what else is good? Obviously, the directing is good. It's become quite infamous that George Lucas's direction consisted of faster, and he never really told his actors what emotions they should be doing. Hello, Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman, and poor Ewan McGregor, who actually managed to do some acting in spite of George Lucas. Speaking of him, he's got a verbal cameo in this movie. Let's see. They've got some throwbacks, and there's tons of videos on YouTube that you can look up about Easter eggs and stuff like that. And I'll leave that to those videos. I'm just trying to do a review of this. So, where are we? See, the problem with doing a video like this is I come off as a muddled mess, and I admit it, but the movie comes off as kind of a muddled mess too. So we get some synergy going on here. So the directing is better, the writing is better, certainly over the prequels. We don't have any truly atrocious dialogue, thank God. Let's see. Yeah, so I don't really think this was a great movie. I will say, however, that I fully plan on seeing it multiple times throughout my life, and I might even see it again in the theaters. The first time I saw it in 3D, and let's be honest, because it was conversion, and conversion never really works properly. You should just film in 3D if that's what you're going to do. And there is only one scene, the money shot, and it's a Star Destroyer that just comes at you and comes at you and comes at you, and it's glorious. But all the rest of the movie, even though it's in 3D, doesn't feel 3D at all. So, Hollywood, please, stop. Really. The gimmick is done. If you're going to do it properly, not this half-ass crap. Oh, yeah. And the one thing that kind of killed it for me, that pulled it down, a few notches on a scale of 10, or pull it down a few letter grades if you're thinking that way, is at the end scene. Now, I know behind the scenes they filmed that whole last sequence in a place called Skellig Michael, and it was very expensive for the production crew to film there because it's very difficult to get the licensing and the permission, and you have to talk to the resident monks and all that stuff. And so they basically milk this shot for a few minutes to get their money's worth. That aside, that whole ending there could have been compressed down to about 60 seconds because there's no dialogue. It's just walking, staring, and holding a lightsaber. Let it end. And, oh yeah, about 4 or 5 minutes later, it finally ends. Yeah, so my final score, if you like, out of 10, I would give it a 6.5. If you like letter grades, I give it a C plus. A for effort, but C plus overall. I don't really personally favor those kind of grading. What I grade is the movie worth seeing on the big screen versus seeing it at home versus streaming it online. And it's definitely, even for all its faults, a big screen experience movie. If you wait till DVD or you stream it or whatnot, you are going to lose so much in this movie. There's just so much in every corner of every shot throughout this entire movie. And that's very typical of Star Wars. As a kid, I remember seeing certain things in the movies when I was first watching them, and then when I was first seeing them on VHS. Oh God, yeah, VHS. You'd be missing things, and then years would go by, and then finally they'd release the widescreen VHS, and then the stuff that I was missing. Oh yeah, there it is. Oh yeah, it's in the corner. So then they chopped it off, and that would be the biggest problem with watching it streamed. Is somebody with a cell phone, they're not going to get that wide screen proper. They're not going to get the whole image, and the camera just isn't going to be good enough. And you really need to get that. So it's definitely a big screen movie, and I would say yes, seeing it more than once to get some more things out of it. That was definitely that's definitely on my to-do, and I suggest that as well. So again, see it in the big screen. I'd say probably 2 times should be enough. If you really, 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 really want to get more out of it, or you like it more than I do, sure, see it 3, 4, 17, 20 times. But I'm thinking twice is enough, and then wait for Blu-ray. And yeah, it's an experience. It's a good experience, but it's not a great experience. And that's my thoughts on Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens.